This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Erie to Philadelphia, from Scranton to Pittsburgh, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewald, Senior Fellow for the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined this week for a special edition by Susquehanna Valley Center's Chairman, Edward Arnold. Ed, welcome to the show.
Good to see you, Charlie.
It's nice to see you, too. This is a special edition because we have a large problem in Pennsylvania. Across the state and throughout Harrisburg and on Capitol Hill, there's one question that looms over everything else, and that is the state budget. Can we come up with one, and will we have one on time? Of course, the state constitution says we have to have a state budget by July 1st. That right now looks like it might be a bit of a
the tradition
feat
of the Democrats is they never have the budget on time.
Well, that was certainly true with Governor Rendell.
Yes.
Governor Rendell never had a budget on time, and Governor Corbett, to his credit, did have all of his budgets on time. Some literally by minutes, but they were all on time. You find a situation here on Capitol Hill where Governor Wolf is really facing a very state legislature with very different ideas than he has, and the House did sort of a preview vote the other week of some of his proposals and unanimously turned him down. So interestingly enough, remember Governor Wolf went to a Harrisburg Chamber of Commerce dinner and he worked the room for 25 minutes beforehand, unlike any other governor has ever done, trying to promote himself and promote his plan. What do you see in terms of the budget picture? Where are we at? What are the different sides, and what do they want?
Well, first of all, it is ironic that when we're talking the budget now, usually we go over how can we do it more efficiently, how can government work better. Right now, all we're really talking about is what is the size of the tax increase going to be. It is pretty unique that we're talking about, first of all, contrary to all the smoke and mirrors, which we really have more than ever, it is an $8 billion tax increase.
That would be if Governor Wolf's proposals would
That's
be
right.
accepted.
His budget, the proposed budget is $8 billion.
And that estimate comes from the independent fiscal office?
That is correct. Therefore, he says their numbers and his aren't the same, but they're using the same government sources, so it makes no sense. It's just somehow their interpretation, which is very complicated.
We have three different groups here, Ed, I guess. We have the governor and his proposal, and then we have the Senate Republicans, and they have their own set of expectations, for example, on pension reform, and they don't want a tax increase of any sort if it can be avoided. And then you have the House Republicans who control the State House, and they seem to have their own set of expectations. Are they ever going to be able to meld together?
Well, I think that what I'd like to sort of talk about here a little bit is to make people aware right now what the governor, contrary to what he tends to put out, again, according to the independent fiscal office, right now this $8 billion increase in taxes is made, and that's not a net number because there's a relief, as he calls it here. But anyways, there's $600 million increase in tobacco, which is sort of interesting because right now Pennsylvania has been a reasonable...
How much of an increase on tobacco?
$600 million. That's not just cigarettes, that's also the other, but mostly cigarettes.
Cigarettes, cigars, snuff.
Yeah. That basically, the thing is we were a exporter, ironically, because our taxes were so much lower than everybody north of here, and we're sort of similar to our immediate neighbors, and of course we're way higher than the southern states. But now we are going to because we're going to be one of the higher states, we will probably be an importer, which means that half of our cigarettes we will not be getting taxes on. In the case of Arizona, in the case of Washington, in the case of New York, these are major, over half their cigarettes are brought into the state. Well, as I say, because we're now going to become a higher price state, we will probably have that. I don't think these are in these numbers. the other thing, so basic, that number, all these numbers are a question mark.
So that's one sin tax that he wants to use.
Very aggressively. The sales tax, of course, is the one that right now Pennsylvania sales tax is on goods, basically, not on services at all. And he wants to basically put it pretty much on everything except medicine, food, and clothing.
On everything.
Everything
so that
else
would be services as well.
That's the biggest single item that basically, but we're talking about, he wants to increase the rate from 6 to 6.5%, which is about $1 billion. But the other, which is the big money, is $3 billion because he's going to include all these items. And a fair number of those are quite controversial. The biggest one is what I call the out-service health care, basically home care, daycare, things like this. This is a big item. Also, he wants to do textbooks. There's some very controversial items.
The governor wants to increase the sales tax from 6% to 6.5%, and then he wants to tax a whole host of services that we have not taxed before.
That's
you
correct.
mentioned things like textbooks. And magazines and newspapers, I understand, are in there as well.
Those aren't giant. The biggest one is this home care thing. This is like over $700 million.
To tax people that are being taken care of in their home.
And also daycare for your children and things like this.
And for elder care.
And the elderly. There is also a tax on education fees and meals. That's the category. I can't explain the details of it. It's a fairly big category again. So he's actually taking some what I would consider controversial things. Now, obviously, I personally, taxing professionals would make some sense. We're in a service economy. However, our lawyers and accountants are going to take major exception.
I think this will lead to pitched battles, I imagine, among the different professions if they're looking at a possible tax. And also, I mean, textbooks are expensive enough for students to buy now. So I hear from my students, and to add to the expenses will be...
and also cable TV is another one that's on there.
Oh, that could be how much money would we expect from that?
That was I think it was, well, he's only talking about the basic. I don't understand why you wouldn't do he's taxing entertainment. So you're also taxing theaters and sporting events and things like this, taxing all entertainment. Again, all items that are not in these three protected areas: the food, the medicine, and the clothing. That's it. Everything else theoretically be taxed. So now some of these taxes I think are impractical because the cost to collect them, like haircuts, well, that's so many little guys. How are you ever going to get them to report their income and so on? The cost of collection should be looked at. Any of our taxes, are they practical? Because if their cost is 50%, well, then you probably shouldn't do it.
Isn't it true there'd be a tax on funeral services as
well? Yes, the funeral industry was a big item.
You can't leave this world without paying a tax.
It was like between the coffins and the services and so on, it was like 50, 60 million or something. It's a big item. I was surprised that we do spend a lot, obviously, in it. Now, the other side of this coin, though, is the relief. The relief is $4 billion. So half of this money you're taxing is sort of, you could say, a reshuffling of the deck.
And how's that relief extended to the people of Pennsylvania?
Well, first of all, it's $2.7 billion of it is property tax.
Relief.
Yes. That it somehow melts in with the homestead thing, and it's complicated.
Who does that relief go to in terms of with property tax? Because I've heard for years about property tax relief at the state level. We've heard many different plans, and I've owned 10 acres for many years. I've never had any real estate relief, property tax relief that I'm aware of. Maybe the taxes are going up so rapidly in my area, I haven't noticed it.
Well, now this would be the property tax relief for what you pay in school taxes. This is not your other tax. But at the same time, it is a substantial item going reasonably across the board. Again, the details of any of this stuff are non-existent. So it's hard to exactly say, but I'm saying this is going to be pretty much across the board, a tax relief, both for commercial and for homes, I believe. But again, we're not quite sure because the governor is not exactly that open.
This was a challenging show to do because we find that this governor's proposals are changing as time progresses.
Well, I don't think they're changed so much as he's funny giving you a little more information, which you may or may not like. He basically has like the pension situation, which we're going to a little bit later talk about more. So let's finish here. Besides the property tax, there's $350 million in additional rent. We already have a rent program. I'm not sure what it costs because, again, the government doesn't get that detail. This is going to be an additional $350 million for people renting.
Of relief.
Of relief.
Okay.
The one that is really, to me, the most controversial is Philadelphia. We're going to perpetually give them $450 million, just give them to them, because their taxes are too high. They should lower them. So they're going to lower their cigarette tax. They're going to lower their property tax. They're going to lower this. They're going to lower that. And we're just going to give them $450 million.
So are we letting the city of Philadelphia decide how?
Yeah, it's just, there's no, as far as I know, none of his monies are really. He's not trying to make anything better or more efficient. He claims he's going to have efficiency. Of course, that's an oxymoron, government and efficiency. But
well, government can't have efficiency because it's always a challenge for government because you don't have market forces driving government action like you do in the private sector.
The part that I would say makes a little sense, Pennsylvania is, if not the highest business tax state in the country, it is competing there in the top 10%. He is proposing to do substantially $450 million worth. This is in the full year net for businesses, which will make us basically get rid of our capital stock tax and lower the income tax to the level which is what our peers are at. So therefore, it would make Pennsylvania not better than the competition, but more in line with the competition.
That's something he talked about at this Harrisburg Chamber banquet recently. He talked about his proposals to reduce the taxes on business.
And the one thing that, again, he doesn't even talk about really is there's $225 million is given to the people in the northern area where the fracking's going on for their infrastructure, for the cost of the fracking to them. And he doesn't talk about that. Is he going to give any of it back to them? They're losing it technically. Now there is supposedly some that they can't lose it. It's, again, there's complicated laws, complicated negotiations, but that is one of the things that is in discussion.
Well, one of the largest pieces of his proposed budget is bringing in new money from severance taxes or taxes on the fracking activity. What does he propose there, Ed?
Well, that's another one of his big items. He's going to get $1 billion is supposed to come in from that area. That is from the independent group. So therefore, but he's also proposed, we're going from the lowest taxing of the gas industry in the country to by far the highest. So will that affect? He's even, the insult to injury is that he's saying, I'm going to charge you a certain percentage of the dollars you get, but he's capped it on the bottom side, saying if it goes below $3, I'm going to tax you as if it was $3. So it's sort of insult to injury. If it's below $3, they probably don't make any money, and now I'm going to keep the tax as if it was $3. That is, it doesn't make any sense. Will it stay below $3 that long? I don't think so. But why wouldn't you just have it as a sliding scale on the dollars? It doesn't make any sense.
What other sources of revenue does he anticipate?
Well, basically, that is the personal income tax. Oh, I'm sorry. The personal income tax is the other very large increase. It's going from 3.07 to 3.7, which is a 21% increase.
And I imagine there's resistance to that in the state legislature.
Well, this whole tax increase. And the thing that he has also twisted the facts, based upon our report here, is that except for the people under 25,000, which will be a wash, everybody else is going to have an increase. The increase, ironically, from the group from 25,000 to 50,000 and over 250 is about the same, 0.5% to 0.6%. The middle group is going to get the highest increase. That's from 50,000 to 250,000, which is somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9%. So basically, this is going to affect, everybody's going to get an increase except for the very low, and they're just a wash.
Well, the interesting thing about our report from the Independent Fiscal Office said that this will result, his proposed budget would result in tax increases for everyone.
Yeah, well, except the lowest group.
And which he has disagreement with.
That's correct.
He's
well, somehow he doesn't seem to think cigarettes are a tax. The lowest group smokes a lot.
Okay, well, let's take a break here, and we'll be back in just a moment to continue this conversation. Stay with us.
Although the budget has taken center stage in Harrisburg, lawmakers have been busy with other matters too. The Senate, for instance, has passed a bill to legalize medical marijuana. Meanwhile, the House has approved a measure that would shrink its size from 203 to 151 members, and the Senate from 50 to 37 members. Lawmakers are also considering House Bill 864, which would cut the term of township supervisors from 6 years to 2 years. PSATS opposes this measure based on a resolution that delegates passed at the association's conference in April. In related news, a group representing PSATS participated in the annual fly-in hosted by the National Association of Towns and Townships. The recent trip to Washington included meetings with members of Pennsylvania's congressional delegation, including Congressman Bill Schuster, who chairs the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It's worth noting that Schuster has introduced legislation to withdraw the controversial Waters of the U.S. rule, which would tighten federal control over public and private land and water. The measure recently passed the House by a wide margin. Over the past year, PSATS and its members have been opposing the rule, which would expand the definition of waters of the U.S. beyond navigable waters to include streams, wetlands, ponds, retention basins, and even temporary bodies of water created by heavy rains and flooding. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which developed the rule, says when it goes into effect, which could be soon, the rule will be narrowly interpreted. PSATS, however, isn't convinced. The association contends that the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers could use the rule to force townships to seek their approval for routine activities, such as cleaning drainage ditches and spraying pesticides in standing water. Schuster's measure, on the other hand, would require the EPA to toss the current Waters of the U.S. rule and come up with a new one that's been developed after extensive discussions with state and local government and other stakeholders. Townships can stay on top of this and other issues at psats.org and by following the association on Facebook and Twitter. Also, please feel free to call PSATS staff too at 717-763-0930.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by Blackford Ventures, LLC, a private equity firm seeking to make significant investments in real estate, proven business enterprises, and their leaders. Find out more at www.blackfordventures.com. And by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On this special edition of Behind the Headlines, Ed Arnold, who's the chairman of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I are speaking about the state budget and trying to understand the state budget and share that understanding with all of you. You find that it's interesting when we talk about government budgets, Ed, that there was a wonderful biography written not long ago by Amity Shales, and she wrote one of Calvin Coolidge. And Calvin Coolidge stands out among all of our presidents because he's the only president that left office with a smaller budget than the one that he had coming in. It's rather refreshing to read that biography about he would convene meetings about the use of paper clips to make sure that the people of the United States got every penny's worth of tax revenue that they contributed to Washington, D.C. Now, we wanted to turn back to Harrisburg and look here at the spending issue. One of the things certainly that we see currently with our budget is right now we're $619 million ahead of revenues that are being collected that weren't anticipated. So that makes us appear to be in good shape. But we have a problem with pensions that we'll turn to in just a minute. But also we have a problem, don't we, with the rate of spending. I think Governor Wolf is anticipating spending in a manner that Calvin Coolidge would not have done.
Well, that is the whole thing. He wants to spend $4 billion more based on his tax collection. He's going to tax $8 billion, and he's going to give back $4 billion in relief. There's $4 billion additional spending. First of all,
above and beyond the last budget of Governor Corbett.
That's right. And one of those things is he's going to add, over the course of his administration, 20,000 more government jobs, which is going to be something in the area of $2 billion more.
Where do we need 20,000 new employees?
From all his programs and all his administration, all these things he's doing, that's one thing that makes it so difficult. They're complicated. Complicated means more bureaucrats to administer.
Okay. We find that in spending, of course, what are the largest areas of spending in the state budget?
Well, the thing is that one when we get rid of the time to talk about is education. It's 39%. He says we're underfunding our education. We are the 5th highest in the country, yet we are in the lower half on the accomplishment. Money does not get quality. Good systems, management, controls. He's not talking about doing any of that because he is a puppet of our state education unions.
Well, this goes back to the unions were some of his major supporters during the campaign, and part of the spending that we are anticipating that he wants to do is all based on redeeming promises that he made during the campaign. Isn't that true?
That's correct. What this is, he wants to make up for the one-time monies that came from the federal government, which they used in their regular operations, which they weren't supposed to. They were to do it for special projects. So now they're in the hole because they've been overspending, and he's going to bail them out.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, President Obama, as part of his stimulus program, gave Pennsylvania $1 billion. Governor Corbett, or Governor Rendell, Governor Rendell decided to give to the school districts. And when you get a one-time grant of money, you don't use it for regular operations. You use that for capital improvements, don't you?
That's correct.
And they used it for regular operations, and so when the money was spent and there was no more coming in, it appears that we have a $1 billion shortfall. And that is one of the items that Governor Wolf used during the campaign against Governor Corbett used quite effectively, even though it wasn't actually true, to gain election to the governorship.
That's correct. Now, the other thing is that the largest single, we talked about our pension challenges. We are $60 billion underfunded in the education and the state employees. The biggest part is our teachers. So basically, when we talk about this high amount of money we're going to spend on education, how much are we going to do to resolve our pension problem? And the answer, part of it is, it's not sustainable. We right now cannot earn our way out. Our liability has increased over the last 5 years, and the stock market's been fantastic. It's up 175%. So obviously we can't grow our way out of it. We've got to change the way our formulas are. We increased our pension 25% 10 years ago and did not fund it. We said we'll do it with earnings. We have proven that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And our governor doesn't even consider that hardly a problem. That's just, we'll do some smoke and mirrors and make it better.
Well, that was something that the governor said during his campaign. He was saying that the pensions weren't as much of a problem as some were portraying them. But yet, now that he is in office, there are some that are saying, unless we do pension reform, we're not going to have a budget this particular year.
Well, the Republicans realize we've been kicking the can down the road now for 10 years. We've got to stop. The acceleration of our unfunded liability is out of control. It's unsustainable. And they're saying this is a critical part of the budget. And therefore, they want it addressed as a budget item, and they're correct.
Mm-hmm. The Senate Republicans have been leaders in this field, in this particular area of trying to stress the need for pension reforms. We also find that property tax relief. What other comments do you have about that, or other?
Well, the thing is, again, if we do not put extremely clear and stringent controls, the local governments will take that relief and just slowly raise the taxes right back up again.
That's what we're concerned about. The school districts might be able to simply jack the taxes up again.
That's right. And
no
basically,
control.
because there's no question, the schools, part of the pension liability is paid for by the state government. Part of it's paid by the schools in their budget. So therefore, they're under pressure to fund this unfunded liability too. And therefore, unless we definitely restrict them from raising taxes, this tax relief will be temporary.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that this budget is going to be passed on time?
Absolutely not.
Oh, for a moment there, I thought you were going to say absolutely, that they would have some way to come together.
No, there's too much to be worked on, and especially the pension is part of this, and the governor he wants to borrow money to put in the stock market, which is not a wise, it's basically a high risk.
I'm giving you 15 seconds. If you were governor, how would you solve the pension problem?
I would definitely put it back to year 2001 and go back to the old structure, and maybe even try to go to a 401k, which is what most of the world is going to.
Okay, so we would reverse some of those increases that Governor Ridge had made just before he left office.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, Ed, we want to thank you very much for
care,
coming in today and talking about the budget with our viewers. It's a big topic, and it's one that's changing every day. So
I think we'll be here to discuss it some more as it goes down the road.
I think so, too. And we hope that you'll be here with us again on Behind the Headlines. We'll see you next week.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Business Council, envisioning a commonwealth in which residents enjoy a very high quality of life in sustainable communities. The council works aggressively to define key long-term policy strategies and solutions to make the commonwealth more competitive, creating and sustaining a better Pennsylvania. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by Daily Express, transporting construction, farm, and industrial equipment throughout the United States, and by Blackford Ventures, LLC, a private equity firm seeking to make significant investments in real estate, proven business enterprises, and their leaders. Find out more at www.blackfordventures.com. And by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.